take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Life in Red.
All right, so this is my first big actor coming on the podcast. Please be welcomed by Kevin L. Johnson. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You might know him. You might know the name. You've been in a couple, quite a bit of productions. Jacob's Ladder, one of my favorite movies, Prisoners, and a little show called Ozark. So that's really cool. Just before we get into Ozark and everything, I did want to talk about Prisoners because I remember watching that movie and it was just a whim on Netflix. And I just was like, oh, Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, that sounds like a good movie. And I just kind of like watched it. I remember like my jaw was like dropped the whole time. What was that experience like for you being in something like that?
Yeah, it was great. I was there for like, everything cool? Do you want to try it all again and leave and then I'll come back? Or
I can hear you. So just keep talking. Hopefully the video pops in.
Okay. Prisoners was a lot of fun. I was there for a couple days. And obviously my scene is at the end of the movie. And I got to work with Jake Gyllenhaal, which was great. I got to meet Hugh Jackman. I didn't obviously get a scene with him, but I got to meet him, which was really cool. Getting to meet Wolverine was pretty incredible. And yeah, I didn't know that I was going to be in the movie. I thought, because when you go to IMDb, it says uncredited.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, I guess I didn't make the cut. And then I started getting text messages while I was working one night, like, hey, we just saw Prisoners, man. Awesome job at the end of the movie. And I said, wait, what? So I'm in the movie? Okay. So I went to go see the movie, and then, yeah, I had a good scene at the end. But that's just weird that's how this business is, like you'll get uncredited for some reason for something that you're clearly in, but then I'll get credited for American Made with Tom Cruise, and I wasn't even in it. Like we shot my scene with Tom. Have you ever seen American Made?
I haven't seen it, no.
So there's a scene where he's at a hotel, but it turned into like a montage of scenes, like he's leaving these hotels. And when we shot it, it was me meeting him up at this hotel and like auditing him because I was with the IRS, and they cut that and they turned it into just a montage of him like closing his trunk on his car, like in different hotels. But for some reason, I'm in the credits. So it's bizarre how that works.
Yeah, that's something, someone who's not familiar with the movie business, like that's something that happens. Like you show up for work and you film it, and then like you don't even like they don't even tell you. It's like, oh hey, yeah, actually we didn't cut this, you're in it. Or
yeah,
you just kind of like find out when you're watching it. You're like, oh okay, I guess like I didn't make it. That's a really bizarre kind of formula.
Yeah, it's you never know until you actually see the movie. It's
right.
Yeah, sometimes they'll give you like a heads up. I think in TV they give you a heads up because I just shot late last year the new Walking Dead in Virginia, and then I found out from casting that I got cut from the episode. So they give you a heads up in TV, which is totally cool because I really enjoy auditioning for the Walking Dead universe. So it'll put me back in the running for, other things and maybe something even bigger down the line. So,
So that's interesting. So you played a couple parts and you were in some and you weren't in some, and then you land this part in Ozark that, of a recurring character, Sam. Like how did that whole kind of process go? Cause that's huge.
Yeah. So I moved to Atlanta in late 2015. I got the audition early 2016. saw the breakdown for the role, like local real estate agent in the Ozarks, affable, loves his dog, loves peanut butter. And I thought the role was going to be like, it said it was for 2 or 3 episodes. And I taped it, sent it in, felt really good about it, and then found out that they were going to go with somebody older. So I said, okay, I've been in this business for 10 years at the time. So I can deal with rejection. It's happened. And then I was driving to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I used to live. I was driving for a callback for a short film, and my agent calls me and he's like, "Hey, they want to book you for Ozark." And I said, "Wait a minute, what? I thought they were going to go with somebody older." He's like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, man. They want to book you." So, so you never know how these things are going to happen. It's just, it's the craziest thing. Like, you're never their first choice, or it doesn't work out with somebody who maybe they had in mind. And then when I got on set, I was just super excited to be a part of it. And my first episode, Jason Bateman was directing me. But I also got to meet Jason Bateman, Laura Linney, and Julia Garner, who was just starting to blow up. Julia was at a table read that we did the first season, and we did a table read for the first 2 episodes. So I kind of got the jitters out of the way of getting to meet Jason and Laura. So when I got on set, I was still excited to get to work opposite Laura Linney, national treasure. But I kind of had a little bit of the jitters out of the way. So yeah, first scene, she shows up at my real estate office, sees me moaning in the background. You'd think something else is going on. And Sam is born.
Right. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was with another actor, and he was kind of talking about that balancing act of like when you're with some of those mega stars. So like you throw Jason Bateman and Laura Linney in those, and you're trying to balance that. I appreciate them and I respect them, and they're a big deal, but you also want to balance, like, I'm a colleague, I'm maybe not at that level, but we're like the same. Like, is that like a hard balancing act where you're kind of like, oh, maybe I should get a picture, but like don't want to embarrass myself?
I decided when I booked Ozark, I wasn't going to ask for pictures, because I felt like, Jason and Laura and Julia are very established. But it's a collaborative, piece of work. So we're all working together to create something that the audience is going to love. So you want to, so you consider yourself on the same level when it comes to the project. And, inside, obviously I'm like, oh man, I get to work with Jason and Julia and Laura. But you want to keep, you kind of keep that on the inside, because of course it's exciting to get to work with those people. Right.
I have a confession. I haven't watched Ozark. It is on the bucket list. It's on one of the lists. When I look at social media, it seems to be quite a polarizing show. You have people that absolutely adore it, love it. They'll say so many great things, and then you have other people I've never seen someone in the middle. It's okay. It's either love or hate. What do you have any thoughts on maybe why the show kind of separates people like that? The style, the writing, the violence, what, I don't know if you have a perspective on it, but it was always interesting to me.
I know, for example, the way it's shot, the cinematography, some people don't like the color that it looks like. It's more of there's more of a bluish tint to it, but that's by design. So people who love Ozark really love that, because you could tell when you're watching Ozark, it's just like it's a style with
It's
the
kind of like dark,
cinematography.
eh? Like,
Yeah, because I remember when the new season of Game of Thrones finally came out, like the final season, they had like the battle, like the big battle scene in like episode 2 or 3, and people were saying, "Oh, so they're doing an Ozark style Game of Thrones," because
mm,
because it was such a dark like look to the um, uh, visually. So now, it's kind of cool that, when you hear that, people think Ozark, it's its own style. And yeah, some people just don't like that style.
right. Yeah. Um, so as an actor, I want to kind of take into the life of being an actor, and we talked about it a little bit. Starting off with your story, of course, what made you want to get into acting? Because I think a lot of people, like, that's a big dream when you're a kid. You see people on the movie screen, you see people like The Rock and Ryan
Yeah.
Reynolds, and like all these people who have like these prolific careers. So everyone's like, oh, I want to be that.
Yeah.
Without understanding how much work I think goes into it. I mean, I'm nowhere near it, and I don't understand it, but I know it's a lot of work. What made you really want to pursue it and take it seriously as a career?
Well, it started in college. Like I switched over I was a computer science major at first, and I switched to an English major. And English 101, like the main, one of the big projects, we had to write kind of like a review, a thesis about the big play of the semester. So, and I had seen plays before in high school, but there was just something different, because in high school, when you get to see a play, especially during like, school hours, it's like, oh, sweet. So we don't have to go to class for like 3 hours or something. So it's more of like a break.
Right.
Whereas when you go to a play at college, it's much more professional, bigger auditorium. The set is more elaborate, and just getting to watch these students perform on stage was just like, oh, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. So it started out just wanting to try something different, to break out of my shell. Because I'm kind of an introvert. I still am. And it's just a way to kind of, to break out of your shell and be more of an extrovert, at least when it comes to the acting world. And I signed up for acting classes like the following semester, auditioned for some plays. My first audition was for the Heidi Chronicles, and it was in a black box theater at Clemson, where I went to college. Had an audition, learned what a cold read was, didn't know what that meant, and I didn't get a role in the production, but I wanted to be a part of it. So I asked the director, I said, hey, is there any way that I can be a part of this? Because I just want to see how everything is done. And they're like, yeah, let's, you want to run tech? I mean, we need people to run tech behind the scenes. I was like, okay, cool. And that in itself was its own like show, because especially the Heidi Chronicles, there was a lot of moving parts, like the set, different time periods. So we were like moving stuff in and out on stage. And I got to meet a lot of people who I'm still friends with to this day. One of my best friends, he had one of the main roles in the show, Grayson. He lives in New York. He's an actor, teaches acting. So didn't get a role in that. Then the next big play was a musical, because we had a musical at the end of the year. So it was a big musical of the year. And it was going to be it was a Greek tragedy. It was based on the Greek tragedy Antigone. and it was called The Burial at Thebes. And I auditioned, and you had to have a monologue prepared. So of course I chose the easiest monologue there is from Shakespeare, from Richard III. Now's the winter of our discontent.
You're right.
I would choose the easiest one, of course. And I put easy in quotes because obviously that it wasn't an easy one. But I got a role in that play, and I got one of the roles that I didn't have to sing, because I was like, because I can't sing. At least I didn't think I could sing, which is something I'll get to in just a second. So that's my first show, my first time doing rehearsal and everything on a play, learning what blocking means, and stage left, stage right, downstage, upstage, and getting to perform in front of an audience was both nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time, because, I had never done it before. And we had this ramp that went through the audience. So we were breaking the fourth wall in the show. And it was really cool because it was like, I was a huge wrestling fan in high school. So I remember The Rock and Stone Cold and Triple H, and they had the ramp that they would come down to the ring. So it was like coming full circle where I was getting to go down the ramp almost like a wrestler coming to the ring. So of course I couldn't help but have this swagger walking down this ramp.
Theme music going.
Yeah. In my head, you smell what The Rock is cooking? No. So that was my first play. A lot of fun. And then the next play that I got was same director, and it was I always forget. I think it was Henry V, and we did it in a black box theater, and I played the role of Bardolph, and we did it in like a campfire kind of setting. And the idea was we were going to do it with a Southern dialect, and because the theory is that Shakespeare, the original dialect of Shakespeare, is very close to the Southern dialect. So we went to Tangier Island for a couple days during the summer, because their dialect has never really changed, because people don't come in and influence the dialect. Usually when you grow up on Tangier Island, you stay on Tangier Island. There's like only so many families. And you see all the same families, like you see tombstones and it's all the same families. So that was where we kind of learned, what the theory is as the original Shakespearean dialect. So we did the play in a Southern dialect. And that was a lot of fun, getting to play like this bruising kind of dude, but he's also kind of like a goofball in a way. And there's one scene in the play that they sometimes, when they do this Henry V, they don't show, because Bardolph, they hang him in the play, but most times they don't show it in the play. But we had ladders on two sides of the black box theater. So when they hang me, I'm literally hanging off the ladder for like a scene.
Wow.
So we decided to actually show that scene. So that was my second play. And then I got to play Willy Wonka in a play at Clemson Little Theater. It wasn't at the college, but it was near the college. So that was my experience in college, getting to perform. And I was used to the rejection after college, because I didn't I didn't get in a ton of plays. I mean, there were plays that that I auditioned for that I didn't book a role in. Like the one where I found out that I could quote sing was the big play. One of my years in college was Urinetown, the musical, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's you had to pay to pee was the idea of the show. So it's like a parody of Les Mis. And I auditioned for like the main character, Bobby Strong was his name. And I said, well, I want to be a part of this show, but I don't know if I can sing. So I decided, I was like, all right, well, I gotta check out the soundtrack at the library. You know, maybe I can sing, who knows? So I checked it out and went to the performing arts department and like went into one of the rooms where people, you know, practice their singing. And I started singing one of the songs and I was like, wow, that doesn't sound half bad. And then one of my friends she's a really good singer. She was practicing in another room because she was going to audition as well. She booked a role in it. And she was like, Kevin, was that you? I was like, yeah, did that sound good? She was like, yeah. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So I auditioned for that show, got a call back. In the callback, there was dancing involved in the callback. And I hadn't quite mastered dancing. So I didn't get a role in the play. But it was there was a lot of people that auditioned for that show, so it was pretty cutthroat. And then what's after that? Eventually I graduated college. A lot of people were moving to Chicago that were in the performing arts department because Chicago was kind of big for theater, as well as New York, but Chicago seemed to be where everybody was going. So I was like, all right, well, I'll move to Chicago then. So that was the plan when I graduated. And I realized that wasn't going to be able to happen because I just didn't have the money to do it. So I said, all right, well, I'm just going to move back to Charlotte or move back to Lake Wylie, South Carolina, where I grew up, right near Charlotte, basically. It was like right on the border of North Carolina. I was like, all right, I'll just move back, try to make some money and go from there. And luckily I moved back just in like when the boom was happening in the Southeast. Like Homeland was starting to shoot, Hunger Games, Iron Man 3 shot there. So things were available to build a resume. It just worked out where I was there at that time. And eventually I moved to Charlotte, got an agent, took classes with the same guy I'm taking classes with now in Atlanta. He works in Atlanta and Charlotte. Got headshots done, got my agent who I still have, who's my Southeast agent. I have an agent in LA and a manager in LA now because of Ozark. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. I could keep going on.
Yeah. I love that. Like you kind of fell into it almost like out of a passion or just trying to explore yourself. And then all of a sudden, you know, you go on this wild ride. One of the interesting things before I ask the wrestling question,
okay,
is so my background's radio, and what I found interesting in what you said is that you're an introvert and that you can somehow, you know, now you have an acting career, even though that you still are an introvert. And I took a similarity to that with radio because a lot of the people who get behind the microphone and talk on it would also describe themselves as an introvert. Is that something that you would think is common in acting and all that? Like, I'm just trying to take the mind of someone who's an introvert and doesn't like to be around people, but yet you're really putting yourself out there, you know, and becoming someone else. It seems odd and counterintuitive, I guess, on what my brain says.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors who are introverts. Like, I mean, some of my idols are Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, and then new school Ryan Gosling is awesome. He's one of my favorites. And they're kind of shy, and especially Robert De Niro. If you've ever seen interviews with him, he's very reserved. Like, so it's almost like therapeutic when you get you get on set or you get on stage, and you kind of get to let loose and
Right.
and show another side.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you've ever watched Dark Side of the Ring, because I just was watching it the other day.
I've heard of it.
Oh.
Is it about a number of different?
Yeah, a bunch of different things. I was watching the Chris Benoit episode, and then I watched Owen Hart. 'Cause it just takes you behind the scenes on some of like the darker things that have happened in wrestling. So I just came up because I was literally just watching it the other day. I'm like, oh, wrestling fan, okay.
Sorry, I gotta make sure my phone's off. I was getting.
Yeah, no worries
Okay.
at all.
Somebody else was telling me about that. You said it's on Netflix?
So I'm in Canada, and it's on Crave, which I don't think is in the States.
Oh no, I think I have. I think I've seen that on Amazon. It's available to download.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Great watch.
Okay.
Especially if you're a wrestling fan, because I remember being a kid and the Chris Benoit situation happening. I was like,
Oh yeah, that was
going
tragic.
back, yeah, and like talk about Eddie Guerrero and all these names
Yeah.
that I used to watch, and I was like, oh damn. So, anyways, as you said it, it just came to mind. So, and it was a funny thing you're talking to as well, that there's kind of that explosion in the southeastern parts of the States when it comes to acting. And I can't remember what I was watching, but it was talking about how I think it was Kim Basinger, like bought a whole town and was going to try to turn it into Hollywood. And
Oh wow.
and it failed in Georgia or something. It's cool that another part is at least trying, because what I understand, that Atlanta's quite a bit of a hotbed when it comes to acting and business and all these types of areas you don't really think about, right? You just think of Hollywood.
Yeah, it's entertainment is a big part of the economy here, and the tax incentive.
Okay.
It just makes sense, and also so productions aren't paying as much. They're getting the city, they're getting they can get the lakes, the mountains. You can represent New York City shooting downtown Atlanta. You can represent the Ozarks shooting on the coast. So that's why the coastal areas are so, people are like, yeah, or they would just stay in LA, but they're getting a tax break, so they come here. And we have a lot of great talent here. So it's great that Hollywood is, branching out. And of course there's still this stigma of, well, if you really, really wanted to be in the business, you'd be out in LA or you'd be in New York. I think that stigma is, it's not as bad as it used to be, especially the more people that are booking big stuff out here. Like a buddy of mine, have you seen Hightown?
No,
yet?
no.
It's a really good show on Stars. But my buddy Atkins Esteban, he plays like the main gangster guy, and lives in Atlanta. He's a series regular, and they shot that in New York and Rhode Island, but he lives in Atlanta. So the more people that are booking bigger roles in the Southeast, it helps everybody else out, because producers, they see that and they're like, okay, cool, because it's about it's all about the money sometimes. Like, they want to make sure that what they're investing in, they're going to get something back. So
Right.
So when
Yeah.
they cast like a series regular, a lot of times they're looking for a quote name, but sometimes those names aren't available. So they got to make sure that they're getting a return on their investment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's something that you don't really, like us as Canadians don't really think of when it comes like taxes and like all those different states and laws and stuff, because we don't have quite the same thing. So
Right.
it's an interesting point that you bring that, and it makes total sense now that you say it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that is it a 0% tax state in Georgia, or is it like pretty close?
Is it what now?
A 0% state tax,
Um,
or is it?
like for filming?
Yeah, like living there, because I know. I mean, I don't know much, but when I'm a hockey fan, and when you hear like teams in Florida or Arizona that they get a better like pay because they don't have to pay state tax to their players, right? So I'm just kind of wondering if like Georgia's kind of in the same boat where it has like a low tax rate.
Well, they get I think it's 25% tax incentive
Mm,
for productions. And then, yeah, we have it like I have a like state tax that I pay,
gotcha.
Like out of my checks and everything. Though.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably the most exciting podcast question ever, where tax law. I'm interested, going into the stresses of being an actor, because you see sort of like the new up and coming stars, if you will, that you kind of have to be multifaceted. Like, not only do you have to be a great actor, well, sometimes you don't even have to be if you're great something else, but so you have to be talented at that, but you also have a music career. You have to have like this prolific social media following. And now you start seeing it where, YouTube stars are landing roles or landing tours and landing all these things. How much of like, because you can't just focus on acting. Now you have to focus on all these other things. Like, how hard is that to manage?
You just have to tell yourself those things. Those aren't things that you can control. I know social media has really changed the game, because a lot of times, I mean, casting directors, for the most part, say they don't look at that. But when it comes to those really big roles, producers look at that stuff still. I mean, maybe not all of them, but I know a number of them do. And they see all the people that are following you, and it's like that's a built-in audience that they know that they're going to get for a show,
Right.
So they know if like 500,000 people are following you, that's 500,000 people that are going to watch the show when it comes out. So it's just something that you have to. It's kind of a necessary evil, to have. Skills when it comes to social media. Like I'm still learning. I still don't have the blue check on on Instagram. I finally got the blue check on Twitter after forever trying to get it. But yeah, it's definitely a necessary evil that you just have to learn how to deal with. I mean, there are classes on social media. Like I know the SAG Foundation did like a virtual Q&A. I think it was yesterday. I'll have to go back and watch it because I haven't watched it yet, on social media and how to have a better social media presence.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you like how, I'm not you specifically, but where, like, getting people to do it for you and teaching and all those things, like where does that start coming into play? Is there a certain point where you're like, I don't even have time to tweet,
Right.
right? Like I'll hire an agency or like, like kind of like your manager. Like, does that become a part of your business profile, at least part of your thought process?
I think there are people out there that have people that control their social media. It's probably not cheap. So it's not something I can afford. But it's also, I mean, I think it's good if you do your own social media too, though, because it's nice to interact with the fans, and it's always kind of cool when you respond to somebody on Instagram or sometimes people still don't know that it's me on Instagram because I don't have that blue check. So
Right.
it's like, oh, I don't know if that's you. But when it comes to Twitter, people see that blue check and like, oh my God, it's Sam from Ozark. And I'll like one of their posts and then they'll retweet like a screenshot. It made my
People love it.
day.
Yeah.
One of the main characters from Ozark liked my tweet. So it's kind of it's a cool feeling, and just getting to interact with fans is a great part of it.
Right. Yeah. No, I know if like I ever tweet like a one of my favorite celebrities and they like it or retweet it. Yeah. You instantly screen like it's like such a huge it is a huge deal for a lot of people. Like you have people who make fan accounts now and like that's their entire persona of you're just a fan of this person and you tweet at them all day or you follow them on Instagram.
I would love like Jessica Chastain is one of my favorite actors. And my birthday is June 25th. It'd be awesome.
All right, let's go.
Hey,
Petition petition Jessica Chastain right now. Here we go.
I would love to get to work with her someday. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that goes into my next questions and they segue because what's the world like now for you and actors with this new, you know, I hate using the new normal or new reality, but with COVID and the pandemic, like it's you like auditions, you know, shows, like have you done any of that stuff while we've kind of been in lockdown and this new type of reality we're in?
So, at least in the Southeast, we have been doing like taped auditions for quite some time.
Right.
For commercial, usually it's an in-person audition the first round, but for TV and film, it's 9 times out of 10, it's always been taped first round. So this is something that we've been used to. Now callbacks is another thing because callbacks are usually in person, but now I'm hearing a lot of casting directors saying that there's not going to be a lot of, in-person callbacks for quite some time. So they're going to be like Zoom callbacks, which means you have to figure out a way to make your auditions, your callbacks stand out because it's a Zoom callback. So what if you got a bad connection? It's things that you can't control. But yeah, we've been used to the whole taped audition for a number of years. And now LA's and New York are having to do that more as well. It's going to be, like you said, the new normal for the industry for quite some time.
What about like shooting? Like I don't know if you have been shooting or if you've had things scheduled that were canceled, but like if you're looking ahead to, you know, new seasons of Ozark or other things you roll, like what's kind of like the talk of the industry on and how they're going to do things? Because I mean, at least in Canada, they're just starting to loosen some of those restrictions when it comes to TV production and movie production.
Well, our governor said, yeah, we're open for business here in Atlanta or Georgia. But I think a lot of productions are still going to be standoffish about starting back up. I was working on like a big project right before this happened. Wish I could talk about it. I had to sign an NDA though, but it's a big project. It'll be out next year. Probably should be out next year, even with the delay, because we haven't finished filming. I had to go back and finish filming it. But Tyler Perry, he's wanting to start back up in July. There's going to be like it's just going to be different on set because you're going to have your temperature checked. They have to figure out a way to make it safe for everybody. You know, it's going to be interesting.
What's like testing like in Georgia? Like, is it readily available? Like you can just go and get tested whenever you want. Like it's pretty open right now.
It's a lot better than it was at the beginning where people just weren't able to find places to get tested. Like I think right down the street, I could jog to a spot where they have a sign out there that says COVID testing.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's much more readily available than it was earlier on, for sure.
So being in Atlanta, I mean, just following along in the news and Twitter, I mean, Atlanta is kind of like ground zero for a lot of things happening in the social discourse, I guess you could say. I mean, um, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but at least following the news that like half or if not more, the police force just walked off over
Yeah.
the firing from Richard Brooks. What's, you know, right now, like what's the climate like living in that city? Is there still protests daily? Are the streets busy? Like, kind of give us a firsthand glimpse of the city.
I think there's still protests going on. It may not be as big as they were like a couple weeks ago.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I hope this is a movement that doesn't lose steam, because, you know, you're always worried about when these tragedies happen and you have these protests and then nothing gets done. But for some reason, I think this feels different than, you know, because when Trayvon Martin, when that, you know, tragedy happened, there were protests, but I don't think social media was as big. I mean, it was around, but I don't think it was as big as it is now. So social media is definitely helping this movement, you know, continue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we're going to see some change from this.
Yeah,
it's amazing with the cops. Like you said, you know, like either retiring or just protesting on their own and not going to work, which means with that happening, that shows you how much work there is still to do. Because if you're protesting as a cop, you're protesting that one of the officers is being charged for murder after seeing the tape and seeing what he did. And the argument, oh, well, he fired a weapon at him, but and yes, they did get into a scuffle, but you knew what he had because you see the tape and they're literally struggling with the taser for like 10 seconds. And he knows what he took from him. He knows it wasn't a firearm. He knows it was a bright yellow gun. So he runs away. He's drunk. I mean, yeah, those things never should have, he shouldn't have reacted the way he did, obviously, but that doesn't give them the right to be judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And yeah, he fired the weapon. He fired the taser at him, but again, he knows it's a taser. It's not a lethal weapon. It's not going to kill him. And he responds with two shots or 3 shots in the back. It's just, and if you're a police officer and you're upset that they were charged with, and one of them was charged with murder, then it just shows how much how much work there is still to do. It's like you see it on tape and you're still denying it. It's insane.
Yeah, that's been the most worrying thing for me. That the whole world is watching. Like after George Floyd, with the video, all the protests, everyone has their cameras out. Everyone's filming pretty much every interaction. You had that incident in Buffalo where they pushed the 75-year-old man on, and then they all walked off the force in the unit in protest. And then you have this happen. Like while this is all going on, then you have this other act. To me, that the whole world is watching. You're being videotaped, and there's still violence happening, and people are still acting out. It's just I don't understand it. It really does not comprehend it in my brain. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's I've been educating myself, been reading more, so I've learned a lot more about like a race issues. Like, you know, I mean, we're a country that was built on white supremacy, and it's just, until we acknowledge that as white people, until we acknowledge what we did, it's just like, we're never going to move forward. So this whole, like, you know, people like, oh, I'm not privileged. I'm like, because they hear white privilege and they think, oh, I never had to deal with any hardships. But that's not what that means. And even I didn't know what it meant when it came to white privilege. I was like, well, that just sounds bad. I mean, I've had to deal with hardships, but it means I haven't had to deal with hardships because of the color of my skin, though. You know, that's what that means. Yeah. But there's so many people out there that just, they don't want to, like, just acknowledge what is right in front of them. It's a system that we benefit from like the day we're born. It's a different world. So when you hear people say, like, things like, oh, I don't see color, or you're making it about race. It's, you know, what is somebody not everything is only about race, but everything is just about race, if that makes sense. Like, something to do with race, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying, because I had those exact same thoughts. I'm from like a small town in Canada, and it's like, you know, it's basically like to the equivalent of like a Republican like stronghold in the States. Like, that's kind of the town I would have grown up in. So I had all these thoughts too, until I actually had a conversation on this podcast where I was able to be like, okay, so color blindness, why is that bad? And have it explained to me so I could understand and have those important conversations. And, you know, I'm glad I did, because it totally changed my perspective. And, you know, I'm a big mental health advocate and speaker. And then when you start learning about, you know, the same thing happened to me when someone brought up like the implications of mental health and racism. It's like, you know that it would have a negative impact, but when you just kind of hear it and understand, you're like, oh, like, it just, to me, I don't understand how people can't empathize and understand what's happening when it's put in such like perfect terms, I guess you could say, in those ways.
We see, like, it's like we have blinders on, and just you know, people will be like, oh, well, I've never ran into a cop that's been a bad cop, you know. But there's also, I mean, you're going to get different cops in different communities. Like, you know, in a gated community where you know, it's 90% white people, you're not going to get the same cops in a black neighborhood. It's just it's a system that is designed still to oppress. And until we tear down that system that we created, you know, maybe not you know, us, but, you know, the past is created, and it's still there, and people hear like, oh, it's not a white supremacist system. If you really, really think about it, then yeah, it is. It benefit, like, it's just like, there are people that were against the Supreme Court decision, and I'm like, you got to ask yourself, why are you against equal rights? Like, because those people aren't taking your jobs. If you're mad at those people taking jobs, don't get mad at them. Get mad at the corporations who hire them, instead of getting mad at the person who's going for the job. Like, you're fighting the wrong people. Like, you're saying, oh, well, these illegal immigrants are coming over and taking our jobs, but that's not the case. It's and they want that in fighting, you know, the upper, like the corporations, it's what they want. They don't want to be seen as a bad guy. So they're like, oh yeah, we're going to have them fight it out, when actually we're the ones controlling everything. Yeah,
no, I think that's a perfect spot to end it. Kevin L. Johnson, tell everybody where you're on social media.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_L_Johnson. And then Instagram, it's the Kevin L. Johnson. I had to be, Kevin L. Johnson was taken, so I had to put the at the front.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.